Number 6 is practice mode, so you cannot choose which phase of a boss to practice against. So in order to go through all the bosses is going to take a long time, but what we can probably do is split this out into lots of kind of smaller ninja fixes. So we go through a boss at a time and release that.
Practice mode and boss tactics are both supposed to assist players during their PvM journey, and while practice mode might be sufficient in the eyes of some players, I think we can all agree boss tactics sucks. It's rather inconsistent, some bosses don't even have boss tactics, and sometimes showing a certain boss animation without telling the player what to do is pointless. I'm fully aware that changing anything requires tons of development time, something that not every player deems necessary. However, in this video I'll cover how it could potentially be improved, so whenever you're ready, grab your cup of tea, sit back, relax, and enjoy. This video has been sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends. You've probably heard about Raid before, so here are 5 key points Raid excels in. It's one of the best looking mobile games out there, from the effects to the scenery. It has literal hundreds of different champions to collect. Raid has a campaign with a story. It features PvP with leaderboards and events. It has an autoplay or idle mode that you can use to speed up gameplay and the grind. What I like about Raid Shadow Legends is that there's a good sense of progression as you slowly craft your heroes into formidable opponents for both dungeons and PvP. Another thing about raids that I personally find pretty important is an active community surrounding the game. Take for example their Discord server with over 130,000 members, and there's also plenty of content on YouTube for those interested or looking for guides. Because the summer has started, Raid has a non-stop schedule of summer events and activities, including fusion events to get a brand new legendary champion, tournaments against other players, and much more. They're releasing 5 additional champions that look incredible. I'm sure the players are eager to try these out. And finally, there's a huge update coming to Raid, being the giant clan update that's bringing tons of missions and rewards to clans. If this sounds like your cup of tea, get a massive head start by hitting the link below or scanning the QR code on screen, as new players will receive an epic hero called Konoru, who is amazing for the Doom Tower, 200,000 silver, 1 XP boost and energy refill, and 1 ancient shard, so you can summon an awesome champion as soon as you get in game. You can claim these rewards from your inbox for the next 30 days only. The first thing to improve should be the way practice mode and boss tactics teach you boss mechanics. You might be surprised, but I believe Doom Eternal has a good way of introducing how to deal with mechanics or demons. They do this by either putting you in a simulated practice instance or by showing you a clip with information. For example, let's say you're about to get the neutron star mechanic at a Stellarn. Your screen would pause in practice mode, showing you a video of what's about to happen and how you can use the neutron star to your advantage, while also showing the risks of not handling the mechanic properly. Not only does this prepare you and teach you how to deal with boss mechanics, but this entire video clip could be integrated into the boss tactics system as well, thereby hitting 2 birds with 1 stone. If you want to take it one step further, you could even hire a voice actor, preferably with an easy to understand voice and accent, to explain how the boss mechanic works in real time. Like this guy who works for Wargaming.
Confrontations between SPG players and tank players have changed drastically.
His voice is easy to understand and perfect for something like this. Now let's keep it real here. I'll be honest with you guys, implementing this for every single mechanic in the game might be difficult when looking at fights where multiple mechanics are important at once. The best example for this is Mirage Phase at Yakimaru, as it's quite difficult to implement something like that in real time for multiple players, but the boss tactics list should still have videos with clear explanations on how to deal with certain mechanics. It also might be tough to keep relevant whenever the meta of handling a boss mechanic changes. For example, when power bursts were released, the way of dealing with the next ice prison changed, as clicking a power burst of vitality is so much simpler than using freedom or anticipation in time and getting your shield on and using resonance. Now, moving on to a similar change that would be great for practice mode would be a warning mechanic, a toggleable option that shows you a warning on screen for important, always the same in a rotation mechanics. However, this is probably incredibly difficult to implement, especially if you consider mechanics that aren't rotation bound, like so much power, which depends on the bar and P4 telos. But yeah, I don't see this ever coming into the game because it seems way too difficult to implement, though it would be really nice. Now, I made a community post asking what you guys would change about practice mode, and the most common comment was phase specific practice mode. In my opinion, this is the only thing mentioned in this video that absolutely has to be in the game. Not only because it's unmissable, but also because it was in the top 10 most wanted ninja fixes over 4 years ago. Yes, 4 years ago. Following the Reddit post and community poll, ModKelby livestreamed the top 10 most wanted ninja fixes in 2 different lists, being the small list, aka easy to fix within 2 weeks of work, and the large fixes list, which could take up to months to implement, including that phase-by-phase practice mode on number 6.
So these ones, as I said, generally they can take up to beyond 2 weeks to months and months and months and months and months. We'll talk about these. So number 10.
The attention-paying viewer will have noticed that some of these fixes, both small and large, are already in the current live game. Now, the reason phase-by-phase practice mode wasn't implemented had to do with the enormous amount of development time. Now, over 3 years ago, the idea of giving the player instant death touch darts during practice mode to skip phases as an easier alternative since it took so long was brought up on Reddit. ModRamen noticed this and liked the idea, except he couldn't seem to allocate time to this change, most likely due to priorities from management. Now, while this was in the top 10 ninja fixes, that doesn't necessarily mean that Jagex will definitively add those fixes to the game. This does, however, mean there's still a chance we'll be seeing this at some point in the game. The next 2 changes might be a little controversial, or at least I believe it to be the case, as I've seen many mixed opinions on this topic. I am of course talking about supply cost in practice mode. Some people think you should not pay for your supplies as it is a sacrifice to pay to get better PVM, while others do not like it at all and would prefer something like Shattered Worlds where you get free supplies, returning whatever you used after leaving practice mode, or perhaps an infinite stack of Silfish and brews and other consumables. Now, I'm a little bit 50-50 on this, but you can definitely see why people like this, as whenever there's some kind of combat beta or beta server or servers, a lot of players flock towards it because you can usually get free supplies and free weapons to test out bossing with literally 0 risk. By doing this, you would reduce the amount of fear some players have when learning PVM, and yes, that's a real thing. People literally don't want to PVM because they're too scared to lose money. It's a real thing. Now, on the other hand, I can see why you wouldn't want to implement something like this, because it would reduce the amount of demand for regular supplies like sharks, rocktails, sailfish, Saradomin brews, overloads, and all that kind of stuff, and that would have an impact on the economy, I'm sure. Because the majority of high-level players, or let's say endgame PVMers, barely even use food when PVMing. I am not part of that group. I like to chonk sharks. I honestly agree with both types of players that want one change or don't want the change. Now, related to supply cost, having an overload and or scrimshaw golem would be pretty awesome for practice mode, just like the ones added to the PVM hub during combat weeks. If not losing your overload and other buffs while dying would be a nice change for practice mode instead. In fact, I think the second thing is the better change, as having an overload golem or scrimshaw golem would again reduce demand, and players that don't have access to those items would get acquainted to the extra damage and accuracy, therefore reducing their effectiveness once they stop using practice mode and actually try the boss for real without those things.
I think it's very important that when you are suggesting ninja fixes, that you focus on the actual issue. Often we get people posting solutions, and it doesn't always highlight what the actual issue is, so we don't actually know what people want us to resolve. Generally, like the ninja team, I have a team of people who can come up with solutions to issues. We don't have a team of people who have thousands of players who can go through and find all the issues. So that's what we really kind of like need you guys to do, is highlight the issue. And sometimes people suggest a solution that we're not too comfortable with, and as a result we decline it. And that obviously makes people unhappy because we're not actually fixing the issue. But if you actually highlight the issue, then it's more likely that we'll do it, because more likely we'll come up with a friendly solution that we're both happy with.
I believe this part of the 2017 livestream is actually really insightful as to how the ninja team works. And funnily enough, in this video I'm talking about some pretty hefty potential improvements that require a lot of work without going too deep into the issues. I'm sure you can also see it in Reddit posts, as they seem to be more lenient towards solutions instead of highlighting issues, but there's specific posts that are dedicated to highlighting issues as well. Obviously this video is mainly for entertainment and discussion purposes, but I truly believe boss tactics and practice mode could offer more to the players, like briefly mentioned in the introduction. Boss tactics should offer more visual insight into each boss mechanic and what it does, and it should have better educational videos to explain how to deal with boss mechanics in a variety of different ways. And it isn't that the boss tactics page is useless, I'm sure plenty of people have found it insightful, but it simply isn't enough. There's a reason a lot of YouTube boss guides get a ton of views over time. Now I am biased, but a visual guide for any boss related content in any game is something I always prefer over a written one. In fact, it has been proven that more people are visual learners, and it's also an easy way to remember information, together with the best ways of actually remembering information, like active recall and spaced repetition. The Telos wiki page is already a better example of how it could look like with more detailed information, but even better would be full videos just like with Doom, showing how to deal with mechanics and what happens if you don't properly deal with them. These same videos could then be used in practice mode to help players gain insight into the rotation and the boss as a whole, instead of just being free death mode. But at the same time, we have great sources like the Runescape wiki, PvMe, and a bunch of YouTube video guides as well. So feel free to agree or disagree with me down in the comments below, as I like a good discussion. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like down below and maybe even consider subscribing, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.